Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily.
And it's season 4, episode 1.
Season 4, I didn't even know that we had seasons, to be honest. I guess that sounds silly because I'm a co-host, but Josh does a lot of the background, behind the scenes things, I guess. So what makes it a new season? Just
New
year?
season, new year. Make it easy.
I feel like we're mid-season because we're like mid-ice season, or for some people we're at the start of the season, or for some people we're I don't know. It's some people are having first ice, and that's a really funny place to be.
Yeah, I mean, we're having first ice. We were just out checking things. I think you threw up a post today about checking ice.
Okay, but here's why it's funny to us is because we had around us, I guess, we all know what happened in the weather, and especially the shorelines melted because of the rain. And so what we had thought, I guess, as ice fishermen or using our experience in the past, is that once the shorelines kind of harden back up, that the middle might still be decent ice, right? And so I think that there was this rush that when we got that first burst of cold, like, did it solidify the shallows enough to get out to where people wanted to be? In some cases up north, that might have been the case, like maybe. But to be honest, we found kind of the opposite happened. And it really surprised us. So when Josh was talking about this last weekend, we checked ice. To be honest, we did a lot more checking ice than we anticipated. We were so sure that we would have, I guess, ice to stand on at that point that we brought our one-man shacks with us. So, we were talking and joking, I guess, episodes before this that we were traveling light and like just our buckets or something like that, right? But we had really brought our shacks and everything.
Scotty,
and it's funny because when we got out to the ice, honestly, what we were finding is inconsistency. Okay. And so I guess, first of all, that's then what makes me nervous, right? But I think we also got into a funny debate. I don't know. It wasn't an argument. We definitely didn't fight. It is not that kind of thing. But I'm just talking about, we always have each other to go out with and bounce ideas off of. But we are also each other's like worst enemy. And when we have like one last cast, well, you got one last cast, I get one last cast. And then, if you're alone and you have more than one last cast, try being with somebody, and it's like, so, that's the thing about checking ice is, okay, and I'm going to be more real for a second than maybe I should, right? But when you look at the maps, the official graphs of ice to stand on, they say 4 inches, right? Fine. And I know that there's a lot of people in this world and they have different standards. There's a lot of people out there that, gosh, they don't go out until they're 6, and that's fine. That's cool. Every single person gets to
hey, Justin,
gets to make that decision. But I mean, I think the thing is, there's people who also push the limit and they go out on 2. They go out on 1.5. They go out on, it's like barely skim ice, and people are testing it to see if it can hold them, And the crazy thing is, a lot of cases that ice does hold people, right? And so I think it pushes people to push their limits. And that's where I'm going with this long drawn out story, is that when we have each other there, it's really easy to want to push those limits because we were testing ice and we were using the spud bar. And, to be honest, we thought that we had more than we did by the time that we drilled, and so we were like, oh, it's definitely 3 to 4. And it's like, well, like 2.5 when you measure it, And so the funny thing is, at that point, we were already standing on that, and so when I'm saying 2.5, I mean, like, that's ice that I would say, don't stand on that. And that's not good. And I'm like, going to be honest, I was standing on it. And so, but that's the thing about it, is the ice was so inconsistent. And so even though in that moment, that spot was holding us, you never know what the day holds. And so that's why I said we are each other's worst enemy, because, well, we still wanted to go. The fish were like literally like 50 feet, less than that, away from us. We just wanted to get right out there. But I mean, I think that's the thing, is you have to, that's why I'm a pretty staunch person about like 4 inches, is because it is too easy to push the limits and end up on something that otherwise is thin. And I guess the thing about me is that, like, I went in one time. I went in one time, but it was in a spot that actually 3 people, me and 2 other people, had just stood, and then just an hour later, I went and I stood in that spot myself and I went through, and so there's a lot of other factors and variables, but, it's easy to push the limits until, I don't know, something bad happens until you can't, but that's too sad to end on. So I mean, I guess what did we do with our day then is we continued to check ice. We looked for other locations. And it was nice, honestly, to drive around and see the different conditions so we could compare. This weekend is going to be a whole lot different. But we did find, I guess this is circling back to where we kind of started, is the shallows. There's a lot of places where the shallows were firming up, but talk about inconsistency. One of the first places that we put the spud bar through, and it went
John.
through without even hesitation, right at that shoreline still. It was a spot that we were both certain we were going to be able to walk over, and we didn't. But it was funny because like 10 feet to the left, walked on just fine, no problems, right? So we were able to be around some of those shallows, make sure that it was like thicker ice spots than not. But this is a great time of year to go and collect all of that line and tackle and the different stuff that was left around in summer. Because a lot of that, people want to get out of that water, but when you cannot reach it, even with a boat, that makes it really, really hard, right? So when you have that icy hard top, you can get in between all the branches and nooks and crannies. And the funny thing is, you never know what you're going to find as far as other people's tackle. So first of all, you might find like a hot color. Hey, it seems like everybody's throwing chartreuse, But the other thing is, I find myself, I'm more often to laugh at kind of the setups that people have. And I'm not here to judge. I don't know what they're doing, but some of these rigs I pull out, I'm like, what were they doing? So that's been a really funny thing. As far as the weekend, what did I miss?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's been so long.
We
It might
didn't
be
even
the
go ice
weekend
fishing,
again.
yeah.
No, I mean, when she was talking about, us as each other's worst enemy, you have to draw a line somewhere, and our line happens to be 4 inches. And although most of you may not think about it, I had to drag Emily off the ice and say, we can't be hypocrites. We say that 4 inches is our number, and 4 inches is our number. And like she said, it's less about the quality of ice and more about just the consistency, right? And 4 inches, you usually have a pretty good base of like how much it can change. And yeah, it was really good ice. Like, we have super good ice around us. We don't have any snow. The stuff that is building clear and hard. There hasn't really been any wind. So it just is good ice, and it's like solid. Like, you can, but you have to set a number, and ours is 4, and we just had to stick by that. And that's why we decided to go and check ice anyways. And then, like she said, there's inconsistencies from like the lake.
Well,
I'm just going to put
really
this
cold since then.
Well, right. And this weekend, there's going to be no issues. There's going to be a pretty decent 5 to 6 inches, I would guess, in our area, probably more north. We're getting reports on some of the bodies of water up north. They were already looking at 6 inches last Monday-ish. So, just depends. Well, it just depends on where you are. Bigger bodies of water take longer to freeze. Deeper bodies of water take longer to freeze. A lot of it's been capped over already. So it's just, you just have to go look or find somebody that can look for you in those areas. And hopefully it's a trustworthy word. And if you have a number, don't be worried to sticking to it. If 4 inches is your thing, the fish are going to be there. It's not a big deal. We're going to get to it. We have a lot of cold weather left. And if you remember the last few years, we've had a lot of cold weather into what should be our warm weather season. So don't worry. We'll get some ice fishing in. We're up north.
We're up north. I think they call us the gateway to north. So we're the beginning of north. I don't know if I can say up north. Who knows? But I guess some funny surprises as we come into ice season. So I guess before I get into that, Josh was laughing at me tonight that some of the thoughts of things I was going to bring to talk about tonight, that doesn't make any sense. That's what I was going to say. But we do think about these shows in our off time, or as escape from thinking about work sometimes. right? So, but Josh said that everything that I was thinking of was controversial. So I don't mean it that way, but if it is, then, hey, sorry, I mean the best. But what I had said is, some people are getting into ice season and having some surprises. So hopefully that's not your tackle. Hopefully that's not a mouse eating through your shack. Hopefully that's not you lost your baits or whatever. Actually, okay, this is way off topic, but for anybody who's been with us for a while, I have a missing Widowmaker jig box.
Oh yeah.
Okay, people, like I
I
have
took it.
references. Yeah, I was gonna make this an interesting story. There is no. If you've heard about this, we found it. Josh had it all along. I never wanted to accuse him, but lo and behold, isn't that funny how that works out? But we were talking about hopefully you're not getting surprises, right? Hopefully you did find your jig boxes also. But some people are doing things like logging into the Navionics app to make sure that they know where they're fishing for ice. And a lot of people are running into the fact that they are now charging $50 to be a user. So people have gone about and, saved all their points and their data and all of that. And I don't even know if you can access your old data without paying for it, right? It might just be all of a sudden you got to do it, right? But I think it's really leading people along a trail of like, what else are they using? So in a minute, but not yet, I'm going to ask Josh, what are you using? And we'll talk about those things. But I do also want to ask the people at home, like, what are you guys using? Is it still Navionics? It's just worth it. You're paying for it. Something else. But I guess, what are you up to?
Well, I mean, what are we up to?
Well,
right?
I mean, I have a few thoughts. We
and-
do things a little bit different. That's
So-
the thing is like we have a few different methods.
Yeah, I mean, we do go different, I guess, but we still start in the same spot, I suppose. But
So what is that?
well, so we're fortunate enough to be able to run a little bit of the Humminbird systems. So we just transfer our data from the boat when we, because we spend most of the summer. Well, we fish quite a bit, but we also spend a lot of time on the water just mapping and looking for different structures, and putting those points in. And then at the end of the season, I transfer all that over to I just have a little, nothing special, just a little G1 Humminbird Helix 5. That basically all I use it for is a map. And, it's a great locator and stuff, especially if it's a little bit deeper water. I don't like to use it in shallow water. Just so it's too strong of a return for me. I like the flasher better, but yeah. So we just use the Humminbird to go hit our points and know that our maps are pretty accurate from year to year, because we can update them if the water goes up and down, and we can finish mapping areas, and so yeah, that's kind of what I guess I use according to you. What do you use that you're not telling me about?
No, we both know. We both know all these things, right? And so you're exactly right. I mean, I think one of the most efficient things that we do is that we take that open water data from the boat, and we're able to, have it on that chip and bring it right along into ice season. And you hope that it is always that easy, right? But you need like the battery, you need to remember the graph, you need like all these different moving parts. And usually 99% of the time, that's no problem. That's what you prepare for. That's why things like stay in the truck. But there's that 1% of time where things just poop hits the fan or whatever. And so we found, I guess, some backup options. And so actually they're both Google products. So I don't need to just shove Google at you. And I don't know, maybe you already have Google or whatever, but I have been really, really using Google Maps. And I just have been putting in all of my different locations, and I can classify them any way that I want. Boat ramps, perch spot, this, that, whatever.
Hey, Jay.
Fishing. It can be generic, it can be specific. But the nice thing is that open water, ice season, anything in between. Hopefully there isn't in between. That's hard to be, right? But I mean, I always seem to have my phone with me, right? And so even if the graph were to die, the battery wasn't with us, who knows what the situation was, then I usually have been finding that I have those points with me. Now I will admit sometimes putting those points in the Google map doesn't seem quite as spot on as these GPS devices. So I do honestly use them as a little bit of a backup, right? But I find, especially if I'm looking for brush piles or things like that, that if I can get like dang near close enough, that we're going to find it, right? Because a lot of times, especially with brush piles, especially ice season, you're not just going to fish one hole on top of it, right? You're going to drill like a few holes, maybe even a grid, maybe even around it a little bit, right? Sometimes fish aren't immediately inside, they swim around. And so when you're drilling that many holes anyways, Google Maps gets you quite close enough. The other Google product, and I think we've kind of mentioned this before, is Google Photos. And so we talk about, yeah, take your fish picture, and that's like fun to share and everything, but also take a picture of your graph in open water season and note what's the water temperature, what's the water clarity, whatever, right? But use those different details. But the funny thing is, so if you have Google Photos and open up a photo, but then swipe the photo like up, just like drag it up. And then there's all this little information below, and sometimes it's not relevant. You don't care about any of it, but they call them like hot maps. Is that what it's like, a heat map?
Yeah, they show heat maps. So you have to have your GPS data turned on. So I know that a lot of you aren't a big fan of that. I'm not. It's fine to me. And I'm sure that Apple products have, I don't know about Safari and stuff. I don't use it, but I'm sure that they have something similar. But it'll take, you can look at your picture information with the GPS locations on it, and
It'll show a map of everywhere that you've taken a photo, though. And it's over time. So you can choose a specific day. You can choose, from here till whenever. But the nice thing is that you don't have to guess where you've been catching fish. So if you're spending a lot of time taking pictures of kids or pets or things like that, that gets mixed in as well. But if the majority of your photos are going to be things like fish or unique bait, you saw a bait ball, or, maybe you took a picture of your graph because you saw that there was a crib there, any of those interesting features that you're documenting with your camera, it will show you through that heat map where the majority of your photos are being taken. And so that's a really fun way, especially in winter, to, I guess, target different areas. Is, there's times where I've assumed like I always seem to catch a fish over there, at that spot. But then when you look at the concentration of photos, it turns out that, maybe those are always, you catch a fish, but they're small ones. If you want to catch that next size, that next group, sometimes those fish are hanging out in this other spot, and those are things that you can tell through that mapping feature. So I guess where this started is, what are people using instead of Navionics? And there's been a few different options in the comments, but I think the only other one that really gets talked about on Facebook, but I don't think it's like widely usable yet, and not as an app, is Onyx. Did you call it Onyx? Onyx. I just always think it's a weird thing to say, right? But that's one that people have been talking about a lot as well. So maybe keep your ears and eyes out for that.
There's another app that's available that kind of has been commercially used by the forestry industry for a long time. And I use it at work, but up in Canada, there's a company that's starting to use it for lake maps, and that's called Avenza. Clayton Schick uses that one, and that one might be coming up pretty soon here. It's a lot like Onyx. I'm pretty sure you can have a free account on there, but then for some of the features you have to buy it. But yeah, that's one to keep your eye out too, is that Avenza.
And if you guys are using something that's different than that, I don't know, let us know in the comments, because we are interested. Or maybe if you're just the person who's paying for Navionics, no shame, right? Those are your fishing points. That's your data points. That's how you do things. I mean, I think for so long in history, right? Like, we're so old. Hopefully we're not this old yet, right? But I think for the longest time, there was resistance to pay for apps, right? I don't need that. I can get a free version, right? But when you have a location to keep everything, it's secure, you can always get in or whatever. Sometimes that's worth it. So let us know if you're that person as well. Okay. Cut. I feel like we need a commercial break. No, I'm kidding. But we are going to kind of switch topics here to something that we told you guys we were going to talk about this week, because to be honest, it came in kind of as a question last week. So I think the way the question came in was, did we watch the new Uncut Angling video? And so I think it was on, now I'm butchering it, Barotrauma and what did he call it?
Yeah, it's bear
Yeah,
trauma. And
bear trauma video, but he put two topics in one. Anyways, you all know what I'm talking about. Ever knows what I'm talking about. But there was a lot of people that I think wanted to react to this video, and I said, hang tight, because we're busy doing the show. We haven't seen it yet. So I guess, like, where do we want to start with that?
I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the production value. I think that Aaron has a really entertaining eye when it comes to making videos. I think there was a lot of great information on it. I think some of it was a little misleading in the fact that, not that it wasn't correct, but the way that it was distributed was probably unnecessary. But but I think there's some things that over time I've forgotten, because I really liked how the main message with the fish, at least, was just don't fish for deep fish. Just don't do it. Like, throughout the whole thing, it was don't fish for deep fish. But then if you do, okay. And so there was, and he brought up some good points that I had forgotten about, because we don't fish deep fish. We choose, we go and check and see if there's fish out there.
But I don't want to keep most of them. So
we don't fish for them. We'll put a camera down, we'll do something just to check and see, like, what they are, verify what's there, and then we'll go back to checking, because there's always fish in other areas of the lake. Not every single fish is in that basin. But I don't know. I mean, I think it was some good stuff. I'm glad that we weren't sticking needles into fish. I think that's a needless thing. Just don't fish for the fish if we're having to open up wounds in them. So I'm glad that didn't come up. But yeah, there was some flaws with what the Minnesota DNR decided to put their name on.
I think that look at the look on your face. That's what I'm looking at, is when you're saying that. Okay. But I think, so I'm not saying that scientists are perfect or terrible. Honestly, I'm not trying to take either of those stances. I think what happened is that a group of people came together for a purpose of a TV show, and they came up with an idea to test bear trauma, and they had that net thing, right? And it went kind of deep, right? And I think like the idea and the care was there, but all they showed is in kind of like what we said, they can't go straight down, right? All they showed is in a small situation where, after the fish were measured and all those things, right? That was kind of a lot of stress to put fish through. Maybe it's not so much, but it's more than just a straight release. And so they did show that fish are not going to swim immediately right straight back down. And so I did appreciate in the video the attempt at the demonstration to show that fish will swim sideways. Is that a way to describe that, right? That they don't just immediately go straight down, that they might work their way down. That might take them 50 feet out this way or 20 feet out that way on their way down, on their way up. And I think that's a really interesting concept, because I guess as an angler, here's what happens in summer is I release a fish, bam, in that spot. And it does seem like that fish goes straight down. And I don't know, maybe the way that you toss it in, maybe it does, right? Maybe it's just at that angle that it just does that. It's not going that deep. I don't know, right? But either way, that leaves me with the perception that a fish is supposed to go straight down, right? And so to see where a fish is going to travel is, I guess, really interesting to me, because it also brings up factors. They didn't talk about this in the video, so I hope I'm not getting off task. But, when you are ice camping and you're releasing fish, and they're swimming away, and then all of a sudden there's a pike under your hole. And it's you think, well, how'd they find me? Those fish are swimming straight down. It's no, you have a whole frenzy of fish that are swimming, left and right and up and down to go back to where they came from. So I don't know. I think there was a lot of different funny points that came up in both viewpoints, I guess. I think Uncut Angling really, he kind of took himself, I'm right. I don't think anybody's 100% perfect, right? But I appreciate that it got the conversation going about this, right? Because Even
Yeah.
though we had saved that video for an extra day, it's like, oh shoot, ran out of time, right? It got people talking about it. And ultimately, like you had kind of summed up, everybody wants what's best for the fish.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of a cool thing. When you have so many people coming at it from those different viewpoints, right? That's ultimately something that is going to be beneficial because you have, I guess, all those different brains and thinking about it in different ways. I don't know. Maybe that's silly to
Well,
say,
and
but
I want to, from the standpoint of a natural resource agency, I'm not speaking for anybody in particular. I'm just, you know, putting this out there. That you can't call that a study. What they did, that was a TV stunt with the aid of a state agency. Um, Me personally, if I was in charge of doing that, would I allow state agents to do something like that without having procedures in place? Probably not. I don't think it's a good look. But like Emily said, it gets a conversation going, which is good. But also on the flip side, Aaron, Matt's saying it was a good pilot idea. You know, um, but I think on the flip side, for Aaron's thing, like you can watch the fish on the forward facing sonar, right? But then in at points, he loses track of the fish for a good 5-10 seconds, and you can assume that's the same fish that comes back in because it's
going in that linear direction or whatever.
but
Yeah.
you aren't 100% sure that's the same fish that's swimming down. And so it's hard. That's a really gray area in that kind of situation. Yeah, Eric is right.
But
So
I
I
mean, I
mean,
think
but
that's the
this
point that I
is
was going to make is, hold on, is, I mean, the thing about science, the thing about research, the thing about the data, the thing about doing studies is that no one study is ever going to like
no.
solve a
Well,
problem,
that's why
right?
it's
And so that's
yeah,
exactly it. Is like, no matter, there's a lot of studies out there that have giant sample sizes,
yeah.
5,000. There's a lot of studies that have tiny sample sizes. We surveyed two. It's like that doesn't qualify. And neither of those studies here were that, right? But
Mhm.
the point is that any kind of data that is scientific is supposed to either hold up to itself, like, right, like be repeatable, or you find ways to refute it, and that helps explain things either way. And like we said, that's the benefit of having people talk about this is,
Mhm.
I mean, you guys go out, tell us what is your experience. I don't know.
Well, and okay, so one more point on the fish side, and then I want to talk about the electronics thing because I think that's a little bit what got under my skin a little bit more. But one more point I'd like to make is, oh shoot,
Sorry, I cut you off.
um, okay, now I don't remember what it was. If I think about it again, I'll try and
That's great.
bring
On
it
the
back
fish
up.
side of
Okay.
things, it was really different handling of the fish, and that's something that was really inconsistent across the two different studies. I appreciated that they were both targeting crappies. At least one wasn't bluegills or bass or something like way different, or whoever knows. Um, Matt, barotrauma has longer term effects as well. You have question marks and exclamation points, and I hope that my tone reflected that because I read it both ways like that in my, in my mind. Because I think that is the other thing that they talked about, I guess, in the beginning of that video is like barotrauma. Like, isn't there the point that you could be releasing that fish, it could swim away, but then still be like internally injured and still die? And so, I mean, I guess neither of these studies even begin to attempt to talk about that. I mean, I guess that would be really, really, I don't know how you do that, right? That takes other kind of scientists. But I think that is an interesting thing. Barotrauma, I think it has those initial effects that we've all seen and experienced. But then I don't know, the fish probably does go through trauma. All I can say to that is I have seen some fish with some nasty, nasty wounds. And so not that they should go through that. But nature is like a really cruel place. And like these fish, some of them overcome. You sometimes you catch a fish, it's got like a nasty gash on its back, and it's like, what even happened to that, right? But we've all seen that fish survive.
Yeah, maybe for a day. or maybe for a long time. Who
But we
knows?
don't know that.
Yeah.
Not yet.
So now let's talk about the delivery of the thoughts on forward-facing sonar from the video. Here's the thing, is when you're talking about a controversial topic, there should be no reason to bring fear into that space. Since electronics have hit the market in any one of the outdoor industries, doesn't matter which one it is, fishing, hunting, hiking, any of that stuff, it's always a controversy because it's new. And and the people that came before that technology are always going to say that it's going to wreck the sport until it becomes a standard. And then we wait until the next biggest thing. And so it's, we can't, there's nobody's going and trying to change regulations. Nobody's going and trying to like step on rights, which that's a whole nother topic. Message me for my thoughts on rights. But no, when flashers came out for recreational use, that was going to destroy the industry.
Like your old-fashioned
The FL8 or
flasher.
whatever, the
Yeah.
Micronars before Vexilar was a company, any of that was going to destroy the industry. And now everybody thinks of it as an antique.
Cameras, waterproof cameras.
Yep. And then we had the LCD screen sonars, and then we had touchscreen sonars, and now we have forward-facing sonar, and every one of those in their own rights was going to destroy the industry, and we're never going to be able to keep any fish, and we're never going to be able to go fishing again. And then here we are. So that's my 2 cents. You don't need to scare people. That's the goal for managers, is not to limit your use of the outside. It's to make it so everybody has the same or similar experience, whether you have a forward-facing sonar or you're fishing with a stick on a string. That's the only thing. It's just to make it so everybody can enjoy it. And there's a lot between those two things. And so managers have a very tough job when it comes to trying to please everyone. And you're never going to do that. And there's going to be people that are upset on both sides, but it's all about compromise. I think the biggest point to take away is that with more technology and with more information at our fingertips, we have more responsibility to take care of the resource ourselves and not blame natural resource managers for when our resources suck, because that's on us.
Well, and I think one of the things about new technology is it's really easy to get blindsided about like the effects of it. Because we haven't seen it yet. And all we can do is imagine in our imagination. I know that's what I'm getting to. It's like, but I think Eric is making a good point, sarcastic or not. Wait until we get to the Tesla self-driving aquatic fishing machine, right? Your boat might connect to a graph one day where you just type in crappie and it'll scan the lake until it finds a pot of crappies, a school of crap, right? Right. And it'll take your boat there. And then that will ruin the fishing industry. That will ruin lakes. That will ruin, that would be scary, right? Maybe it's funny to think about. Maybe it won't be a thing. Maybe it will be, right? I guess I'm not predicting, and I'm not trying to make that a thing, right? I still kind of like the sport of fishing. But I think like, don't get so blindsided by like loving or hating equipment that I don't know, that you forget the rest of the sport. I was reading, actually, somebody was making, I wish I remember which Facebook page this even was. I would give them credit. I have no idea who this was. But this person was ranting about, well, it didn't start as a rant. They were talking about, actually, they were that person who their whole life, they grew up fishing the same spot. Whether it's summer, whether it's winter, whether it's fall, spring, something in between, no matter what the temperature was, no matter what the wind was doing, that person fished the same fishing spots because that's what they were taught to do growing up. And they said that it wasn't until they became a young adult and were out on their own. Honestly, it sounded like kind of sad, like maybe their grandfather died or something and they were out on their own. But what they were forced to do is learn all those things that we mentioned, that wind direction. Where is it blowing from? Where is it blowing to? What does that make fish do? What are the water temperatures? Is it clear? Is it cloudy? Is it this? Is it that? And it's so many factors, right? There's so many things that are going on there. But once you can put those puzzle pieces together and find fish, I think that's such a hugely rewarding thing. And maybe, I don't know, maybe up a live scope, maybe you put it down the hole, maybe you find the fish, maybe it's still fun, right? Right. But I think part of that growth, part of that sport, part of being an outdoorsman is some of those other factors, is learning about the tendencies of fish, or maybe even like the big fish. What do they do versus the small ones? So I don't know. I just hope that the sport doesn't evolve so far that it's not sport.
Well, I think there's a point in any of these recreational activities that comes back around to getting back to the sport, right? So I think forward facing sonar, besides just the fishing aspect, has a lot of great youth catching ability, being that it's very interactive, and that's something I feel like kids are missing a lot these days. Is they're used to having like a very quick gratification schedule, right? So if they're not getting their rewards, like, and that's just a societal behavior. That's something that has gotten that way. That's not how kids are these days. That's how that they've been brought up. Not individualizing anybody. I'm just saying in society, that's how we've come to raise them. And this is something where they have that quick reward. They can see the fish on the screen. And so even before they even wet a line, if they see a fish on the screen moving around, they caught it. They caught a glimpse of that fish. And so they've already got it. And now you can teach them how to turn that fish from something that's moving on a screen into something that they're holding in their hands. I think that's a really valuable thing. And I think that's the first step, right? Because we can't just shove all of the, you got to do research, and you got to look at maps, and you got to fry yourself out on the boat driving around mapping, and you got to go out there when it's crappy out. You got to do all this other stuff. You can't shove that down anybody's throat that you're teaching, let alone kids. You got to get them hooked first. And then all that stuff comes later when they are sick of catching bluegills this big. And they're like, okay, now how do I get bigger stuff? And then they start reading. And then you go, oh, well, I'm going to go on this walleye trip with my buddies. Now they're hooked onto walleyes, and now they have to buy all the walleye stuff. And then they come full circle back around and they buy their own live scope. They get back into it. And so I think there's an advantage there to this technology outside of just the fishing realm, just for the industry. I just think that
the way that you describe people getting into the fishing industry sounds like super addicting and unhealthy, and like maybe something that you shouldn't do.
I mean, maybe some would call my relationship with fishing unhealthy. I don't know.
Sitting over here laughing like that's really, all of that is really intense. But I think that's part of it.
Welcome
I think,
my life.
but I think that's, but okay. So older generations, let's start with, my grandparents, our parents, they didn't grow up with computers and cell phones and any of those things. And like, honestly, like games were awesome and better than nothing, but were only so fun. And that's part of why the outdoors
Figuratively
we're such a big part of people's lives, right? But because it was a big part of their lives, that's how it got passed down. Like this needs to be a big part of your life, right? And so I think you're right. Like fishing and hunting and all that was always passed down, exactly like you're saying. It's the maps and it's the wind speed and it's the this and it's the tips and the tricks. And if you don't know the tiniest details, it's not going to happen, and it's so intense. It's so intense and it's unapproachable. And so I think exactly what you're saying. When you have a graphing system, a camera, that you can put down the hole, put down the water, look at that brush pile, see what fish are doing. I think that gives people a lot of hope, because let's say you're fishing and you're not getting that bite, or maybe you're getting used to it and the bite is so small that you are not realizing to detect that yet, right? There's a learning curve to a very delicate bite. And so when you're the kind of angler that is learning that, if you can put a graph down, put your camera down and see those things happen, there's an amazing amount of learning that comes with that.
Yep. I think you're spot on with that.
With that being said, we don't have forward-facing sonar. And honestly, most days I don't miss it. Most days. There's honestly days where the bite's really tough or this or that. But the other thing that's really funny, maybe I shouldn't say this. So many people on the water these days do have it though. And you can see the direction that everything is pointed. Like everyone holds theirs like it's a big secret. Like they're the only one that knows. And it's like, we all know. Right. And so like if every sonar is facing east into this bay, it's like that's probably where the fish are. So I'm not saying that I'm stealing people's graphs, but like especially in ice season and everybody's loaded in one zone looking the same direction, it's like this is not a secret.
Well, and I bet the binocular industry has seen an uptick in sales too. Just saying, they're cheaper than a forward-facing sonar.
Oh my goodness.
No, I mean I'm not like neither of us are adverse to getting one. It's more of a money thing, right? I have better things to spend $3,000 on.
If this was not a green screen, you would see that we're literally ripping this room apart right now.
But I mean, like, we have better things to spend $3,000 on, and I'm not saying that it's not worth it. We just, that's just not in our thing right now. And
no, but we just came back from a trip to Mexico, and that's really high on my list to do again.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right. What else you got?
Well, I don't know. I just this was a short list, so I'll admit to people we've already been through two of my topics. One of them was just generally best ice tips. I'm interested to see what people have to put out there. For some people, it's first ice. For some people, it's second first ice. For some people, they just want to know. I didn't have a good tip prepared. I don't know. Wear your creepers so you don't slip. Have your spud bar. Have your gloves. Make sure your stuff is charged. I don't know. Have fun.
Yeah.
That's all my tips. Do you have a tip?
No, you took all of them. Took all of my tips too.
Okay. The only other thing on my list, honestly, I was hoping to, this is like really selfish, honestly. I was hoping to poll the people. I at Christmas time got a Eurotackle gift card. And so I know that there's some Z Vibers that I've been wanting and some other things and some fun new stuff out this year. But honestly, I just wanted to ask people after the show, we might go on and we might do some tackle shopping. So I'm just interested. If you are a Euro Tackle fan, let us know what it is that you're fishing with, what colors you like, if there's, I don't know, anything, any of it, because that's one of the things that we're doing after this.
Yeah. Looking at Euro Tackle stuff.
That's all that you have. You're not even excited. Look at you. You're like, he's like already mentally shocked. He's already he's either done or has no idea what he wants yet.
I waited. I mean, I've been looking.
Whatever. We'll see.
I mean, how can you not like finesse fishing stuff?
Well, I mean, I think, okay, how stupid is this? For me, this is a big jump. I won't say it, I guess, but like I've said this before, so often I leave on the end of my line a little gold hook, and then I can switch the color of that tail. It can be a bug profile, it could be a minnow profile, it could be red or green or gold or anything. And so often I just get stuck using that little gold jig. So any honestly, even using a Z Viber is to extent like new for me. I mean, I know how to do it. Obviously, I've done it before, but like I think it's not my confidence bait, and that's the kind of thing that I want it to be, right? Because I know that baits like that work, but I've just gotten myself so stuck in a rut that it is time to
shake things up.
I was gonna say spread my wings and fly, and then I was looking for a fishing analogy, and it didn't come. So yeah, all those things. Oh my goodness. Cool. as we are
Any
looking
new
into
fishing tricks to try this year?
any new fishing trick. Okay, I guess this is not, maybe this is new to some people, but you know what I am doing? I always do this, but it's a unique thing, is I set up a lot of my jigging rods with like a slider jig, like a second. I have like a double rig on every rod basically. And so what I have is, like I was talking about, that little gold tungsten at the bottom. And, I have that one on there because it's kind of a heavy jig. And then I have like a certain amount of leader. And then I have like a little swivel to the line. But right above that swivel, you can put any little slider you want, anything a little light, a little hook. I wish I knew what those Widowmaker little things were called, because
I'm glad he's
Brian
probably
hates
glad
these things. Yeah, he's not.
that you don't know.
But they're awesome. They're just like these little like fly
He's
looking
cute.
things. And so it's nice. It just like slides around everywhere. And it's funny because a lot of times when we're ice fishing, and Josh, when we're catching fish, and then he'll ask this question: top hook or bottom? Because they do both work. And you wouldn't think that just like throwing a jig above a swivel would work. You wouldn't think so, but it does. It does. So I don't know. That's one of my best tips. I just do it all the time.
Yeah, new fishing tricks. I don't necessarily know that there is that many new things to do out there. I think just
You're working
there's
on a new trick.
what's that?
You're working on our truck bed. I mean, it's got the topper on it and everything, but we're looking for a way to store both one-man shacks so that one is not just like sitting on top of the other, just like dumped inside. And so you're making like two little platforms and stuff to like try to make them fit in there nice. Look at your face. You're like, nope.
Mm.
No, it's not working.
The problem is the topper opening in the back is smaller, like the height from the top of the window to the top of the topper is like 4 inches. And so I need a way to slide the front of the sled up there and then lift up the back and then put support underneath. So then we can slide the second sled underneath. So they're not, stacked on top. And not that it doesn't work. I mean, that's what we all have always done. I just, we like keeping all of our stuff together. So it, our stuff doesn't get mixed up. We can keep it in our own individual sleds.
But the way they were stacking it right
But
now,
I don't know if that's
I
a new fishing trick. That's
don't
just
know. To bring your stuff to the lake, that's a big trick. I require a lot of gear.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just like Emily said, just focusing on some new tactics this year. I think for me, it's just been I'm one thing that I've always missed about open water when an ice season comes is fishing with a little bit bigger baits. And so this year I'm trying really hard to just keep something a little bit bigger in the water until like I'm absolutely getting crushed by Emily. Like if she's just like sitting over there catching fish, I'm not gonna die on this hill, right? I'm gonna put a couple fish on the ice, but
you've caught nicer crappies than I have.
Well,
I've caught like a lot of nice bluegills, like a lot.
my quality has gone up a little bit this year, which has been pretty nice. But it just takes a little bit more dedication. But with that, I think it's been a lot more rewarding for me. Not when we say this a lot, like we don't want to take. We're not saying that catching fish is something you take for granted. But for two people that fish almost enough to be guides, like catching fish is that you get to a point where you find yourself going, take it off, throw it back, take it off, throw it back, and then moving around and you forget that you're there to do that. Like
you do?
Yeah.
I don't forget. I'm like, this is what we're here to do.
It loses a little bit of something, right? And so being that you have to work that hard all day and then you get like 1 or 2 nice fish, I think those fish mean more to me. And so I just, that's something that I've been working on, is just trying new stuff, not getting stuck in ruts, trying to keep a better mental note on all the different things that work, right? Because you can find something that's really working well. The hard part is remembering that you can always go back to that thing that's working well. So if something is just like crushing the crap out of fish, switch it. You can always go back to it, but that's the hard part, right? Because you're catching fish. So switch it to something else. Get confidence with something else. Switch over to your Z Viber or something. If you're having a really good day, just switch to something else and build your confidence up in the rest of your tackle box. You spent money on it, you should be using it. So that's what I'm working on.
And it's just that easy. So there. That's how you make it sound. It's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But I mean, I think you do have a valid point. And that's just showcased by the fish that you caught this year. And again, like, I've caught great fish. And I'm not disappointed at all. But different things, different outcomes possibly. Look at you laughing at all these comments here. That's always the best part of this. So
well, I like that. Don't stay in a group. That's right.
It's true.
I wouldn't say, Matt, it's not challenging.
When you were talking about fish after fish after fish.
Yeah, but I mean, like that, it just is, you just have to switch it up once in a while.
There you go.
Joe Barry.
Who was it? Tobin was saying that he has no ice yet. Tobin, I always forget where you're located, but
South Dakota.
that cold, it's settling in places, man. It's settling in. It's getting ready. I don't know how much ice we have, because to be honest, I haven't checked it since Sunday, and I won't give you those reports because it's changed a lot since then. But I can tell you that it has been cold, so we are going in the right direction, and I do expect to be, I don't know, on some pretty good ice this year or this weekend, to be honest. So I don't know if we're going to, we have a few spots that are like right by the house that have been kind of our go-tos for early ice, right? So I don't know if we're going to end up in some of those same places, or if we're going to venture off into uncharted territory, a place that we haven't been since open water, right?
Hey, Corey.
But either way, we have a lot of good stuff coming up with fishing. We're looking forward to sharing all that with you guys. And I think I'm going to start lining up some of these next few guests. You guys, we're here talking ice season, but there are open water expos that are about to be starting off. So some of these different vendors that are coming to the Wisconsin Fishing Expo at the end of February, especially those that are crossover into ice, we might start having them on podcasts, talking with them. I guess getting all that going. So what else?
That's it.
Okay. If there's any of the things that we talked about here tonight that you are still dying to talk about, make sure to post that in the comments, because we will still try to get back to you guys and I guess talk about all that stuff in the comment section. Otherwise, we are here every Thursday night live talking to different guests, or sometimes ourselves and sometimes just this Fisher Cat. But if you miss us live on Thursdays, that's totally okay, because you can watch us on Facebook, the live replay, on YouTube. I think we're on LinkedIn. Otherwise, all of these get pulled off the internet or whatever fancy way that it works, and the audio files are turned into a podcast. So if you are the kind of person that is traveling for the beginning of ice season, you're going north to find some ice, make sure to listen to some of these podcasts along the way, because you never know what you're going to learn.
And play them when you're in the ice shack. Maybe fish like them.
Maybe fish like them. Let us know. Let us know which episode catches the most fish. That would be so fun. Maybe somebody's tone of voice, they just like love it. Just always come. That would be so funny. Anyways, we just appreciate everyone who's here, takes their time out of their evening to be with us each of these Thursday nights, because you guys are always a huge part of the fun. And with that, looking forward to seeing everyone on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.